And today I'm going to talk to you about, I'll start to share my screen and I hope it works. Here we go. Okay. I'll close that and it's in the way. Okay. See, I said I was sleepy, so it's definitely true. So I'm going to talk to you about the new tour, pioneering tour, called Quest for the River Dragon. And the river dragon in question is this beautiful creature here, which is the Japanese giant salamander. But first, I'd like to introduce Japan to you a little bit, because a lot of people have an image of Japan, but mostly it's kind of centered around culture rather than wildlife. And yeah, that's something I'm working on changing. And I'd like to talk to you now about how special Japan is as a country of nature. So Japan is an archipelago on the eastern edge of Asia, and it actually consists of nearly 4,000 islands in total. You have four main islands, which is Hokkaido in the north, the main island of Honshu, which contains Tokyo and Osaka and Mount Fuji and all the famous places, and then a small island here called Shikoku, and then Kyushu, which is where I'm actually at now. And then also in the far south, almost very close to Taiwan, actually, is the tropical paradise, you might say, of the Ryukyu Islands, commonly known as Okinawa. So Japan actually extends an incredible 1,869 miles from northeast to southwest. So it really does have, very different environments from the north to the south, and many climatic zones. So subarctic, tropical in the south, and temperate in between. So Japan is home to an incredible, I think, 130 species of mammals. Many are endemic to Japan, and also it's a bird lovers paradise with over 600 species to be found. So that makes me very happy. And also, and importantly for this talk and this tour, there's at least 73 species of reptile and some 90 species of amphibians, with approximately half being endemic. So as you can see, Japan is a very diverse in terms of climatic zones and habitats place to visit. So, okay. However, ecotourism and nature conservation is actually quite a new thing in Japan, and is still there's lots of work to be done. Historically, Japan had a deep connection with nature, and I think that's an image that the Japanese government and perhaps sort of movies and whatnot portrays, whereas the major religion is called Shinto, and is actually quite similar to paganism in many ways, and it recognizes gods within nature. So that would mean, obviously, if you think, there's gods within nature, then you would take care of it. And that basically was mostly how it happened in the past. However, in recent times, Japan has lost its way, and it's been more focused on economic development, unfortunately. And yeah, and it's lost its way in that regard. And actually, animal conservation is very limited, with little, if any, protections for the actual habitats. Several of the species are protected by law, so you're not allowed to touch them or catch them or hunt them or whatever. but in terms of the habitat protection, it's sadly lacking. I tell you this because ecotourism, I'm a real advocate for, and I'm pushing every day of my life to make it an important part of tourism in Japan. Is in its infancy in Japan, but it really does have the potential to be a very important tool in the fight to save wildlife as the country struggles with many kind of well-published, well-documented social and economic issues, such as the aging population and a drop-off in the economy since the bubble burst in the early 90s. And the reason I kind of lay these facts out for you is the fact that if you come here, you can really be a pioneer, and just by coming here you can make a real difference to these special creatures of Japan. And so yeah, your visit can really make a difference.
Richard, sorry to interrupt, it's Barnett, sorry. We're still on the first slide.
Oh, that's screen sharing is paused. Why is that? Okay, how do I fix that? Resume share.
Yeah, let's go for that.
Sounds like a good idea, but that's nothing's happening, right?
Not at the moment.
Okay. Let me see if I can come out of this.
It may, yeah, maybe come out and start again.
Okay. Please tell me if something changes.
Okay. Right. Something has changed. I think we're now looking at your live screen. We can see the map and facts about Japan.
Okay. So let me see if, okay, that's something. Can you, oh, no, see all my very untidy desktop there. Okay, so I was trying to present and then present full screen. Sorry.
Don't worry. Don't worry.
Okay. Can you still I'm going to switch slides.
Okay.
Can you see that? Can you see me switching slides or not?
Do it again.
Can you see Tokyo now?
No.
Okay, let me, maybe
I think just go back to where we can still see the little tiles along the bottom, maybe.
Yeah, okay. That might be the issue. Okay, can you see now? How about now?
Yes. Okay. I think let's stick with that view because that seems to work, I think. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry. How about now? Is it gone again?
No, that's okay. We've gone full. Ecotourism.
Yeah, and you can see. Okay. And can you see Tokyo now or not?
No.
Okay, we'll have to do it the really basic way. Okay.
Yeah, I think just stick on that one.
Okay, so yeah, so I've talked about the ecotourism in Japan. Where's the pages gone? So did you see this map before?
No.
So okay, so can you see this page saying facts about Japan?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, we'll go from that. Sorry, it's going to be a bit smaller than I'd hoped. Okay, then you've got, so like I talked about Japan stretching, the many climatic zones. You've got Hokkaido and the Sea of Otosk and Russia up here. And then at the southern end, you've got the tropical Okinawa, the Ryukyu Islands in Okinawa, which is really near Taiwan. So it's a really long place, for lack of a better description. So I've lost my groove a little there. See if I can get my call back. So I talked about ecotourism. Okay, so I'll talk now a little bit about some of the places that we'll visit on this tour. So one of them, of course, is Tokyo. And Tokyo probably doesn't need too much of an introduction, but we'll just touch on it quickly because we'll spend the first night and morning in Tokyo. Tokyo is basically the largest city in the world, and largest in terms of population, I should say, with a population of 14 million, and that rises to 30 million people in the greater Tokyo area, which is a lot. And despite its size, is actually a very safe and clean city to explore, which is pretty amazing. Every time I go there, is you can walk around. If you want to get home from A to B, you can stick Google Maps on and take the small streets, back alleys without any fear of anything happening, which is pretty strange for a place with a population that large. And then we'll stay in a comfortable and modern hotel for the night, and then the next morning we can enjoy some sightseeing of kind of a cultural nature, and for example visiting this one here, which is Sensoji, right in the center of Tokyo, in the kind of the origin of Tokyo, if you like. When it was a small fishing village, Tokyo grew out of this temple. And then we'll also go to the Hamurikyu Gardens. So it's some traditional kind of, I think most people have probably heard of the shogun, if maybe not understand what it is, but it was kind of the shogunate play gardens back a few centuries ago. Okay, and then the tour moves on to Tottori. So the Tottori prefecture is where I'm based, actually, on my little farm called Anfield Farm, which some people might understand why that's called that, but we won't go into that. And Tottori is the least populated prefecture in Japan. So it's considered by many to be the most rural, which is, if you're going to do a nature tour, should be a good place to start. And then you can see this beautiful mountain is not Mount Fuji, it's actually Mount Daisen. And it's the largest mountain in the Chugoku mountain range. And it's also where I live, kind of halfway up. It's a special habitat for the Japanese giant salamander. And I'll talk a little bit more about why that is in a moment. But whilst we're there, we'll have a chance to see many other amphibians, reptiles, and actually a lot of birds, insects, and perhaps some mammals too. And importantly, during this tour, we'll have chance to partake and observe in actual genuine conservation activities. So we'll talk a little bit about that. So Japanese giant salamander, and why is it special? So there are some photos coming in a minute. So yeah, you can appreciate how beautiful they are as well. But there's basically one of three types of three types of giant salamander in the world, generally speaking. You've got the North American hellbender, the Chinese giant salamander, which has about 5 recognized species at the moment, and then the Japanese giant salamander. And the Japanese giant salamander is considered the second largest of those 3, but it's very similar in size actually to the Chinese giant salamander. And it said it's known to grow up to 1.5 meters in length, 5 foot for people that think in those numbers, which as amphibians go is pretty huge, as you obviously can see. And they can actually weigh up to 30 kilograms, which I would say is about the size of perhaps a Labrador or a retriever. And I'd say, how long can they live? Well, there's actually hasn't been much research done on them, unfortunately. So it's difficult to say exactly, but leading experts think they can live in the wild for perhaps up to 100 years. With the oldest one living in captivity for an estimated 53 years before it died of basically obesity because it was fed oily sea fish. Because their DNA hasn't changed for 23 million years, it's what's considered a living dinosaur. So yeah, if you get to see them in the flesh, then you'll kind of probably have that image, like you're in the presence of something out of Jurassic Park, but friendly. not going to bite your head off. But unfortunately, the Japanese giant salamander is considered vulnerable by the IUCN and also by the Japanese Ministry of the Environment. And just a matter of a couple of months ago, it moved from near threatened class to vulnerable. So things are getting worse. So we, time is of the essence. So please come on the tour and help save them. Okay, and the Japanese giant salamander is considered a special national monument of Japan, and since 1952 it's been illegal to touch them, which sounds good, but the problem is that the habitat is not protected. So only licensed researchers can touch them, but there's concrete poured around them and they're not able to move. So we need to do work to remedy that. And I'll just summarize that because I think I'm talking too long. But so the Nawa River Basin is where we will be based. And this is where I've been involved in conservation for the last few years. And it's special because it's the lowest altitude habitat. So it's almost at sea level, which is very strange. And that's basically because of the unique features of Mount Dyson. It's a huge landmass on the Sea of Japan, which has high humidity. This means there's lots of fresh water and fresh cold water, and cold water, as you probably know, has a larger amount of oxygen, which is important for large amphibians. So, and this cool water runs almost, it runs right straight from the mountaintop straight down to the ocean. Okay. And so during our time, sorry, there's a bit of a rubbish picture there. It's we're going to visit some disturbed habitats. And this, as you can see, this salamander, which is about 75 centimeters in length, hard to tell from that. But as you can see, it's very easy to observe because it's on a flat concrete kind of slab, which is in front of weirs. And unfortunately, there's lots of these weirs in this habitat. So like concrete walls, a lot of mini dams of sorts. So it does mean they're actually quite, if you know where to look, then they're quite easy to observe up close. So, good for that, but terrible for the salamanders. And then there's a very important breeding ground within the same area. And so there is some hope for the future because this was taken just a couple of years ago. And the fact that this size salamanders are there shows, there's hope for the future. But there's basically been almost zero research done. So when we when we visit as part of the tour, we will do research, and that is actually very beneficial for the future conservation of Japanese giant salamanders. And it's actually an extremely beautiful pocket of habitat. And just by the fact that it has quite steep cliffs on either side of it, it means that it hasn't been suitable for development so far. Okay, then next, moving on, apologize, please give me a shout if I'm talking too much. It tends to happen a lot in my life, even at this time of day. So next up on the after Satori area, we'll head to Kyoto. And Kyoto is the former capital of Japan and one of the most famous places. I think pretty much everyone that comes to Japan goes to Kyoto, apart from herpetologists who come straight to Satori and meet me, and don't worry about that. But I think it's great to combine cultural elements and nature viewing as part of one tour. So that's what we'll do. And Kyoto is the center of kind of famous culture in Japan, which most people have heard of, like Zen, Buddhism, tea ceremonies, and geisha. And actually, so this picture on the left is the Ginkakuji, the silver pavilion, and most of those things you've listed there and probably things you've heard of originated from this temple. So Kyoto has an amazing 17 World Heritage sites, so such as mostly temples and shrines, which we can visit a couple of when we have some time. And during our time in Kyoto, we'll do basically a combination of nature and cultural activities. The nature activities based around Lake Biwa, which is just a 15-minute train ride out of Kyoto, and is Japan's largest freshwater lake. And we'll spend our time there with an expert guide and photographer who I will introduce in a moment. And also, Japan's obviously famous for food, and there's nowhere better than Kyoto to find every kind of type of famous and not so famous Japanese food, made by people who have dedicated their life to perfecting recipes and the way they prepare it. And then the next stage of the trip moves on to Okinawa, so those islands in the south. Again, sorry, there's some more actual pictures of wildlife coming up. So Okinawa is a tropical paradise, basically, as you can see, and we will be staying at a private beach resort, which is this one shown in this picture, actually. So because we're doing a mixture of day and night walks into the Yambaru jungle, on days that we're not doing day hikes and day searches for herps, we can actually chill out on this beach, go snorkeling, and kind of actually have a bit of a holiday as well for those who need it, including me, hopefully. And then also again, we'll be guided by an expert photographer and nature guide who I will introduce as well. But so probably most of the sexy stuff, the in terms of species at least, are to be found in the Okinawan leg of our trip. And again, there'll be some photographs coming up of these include the kuroiwa ground gecko, odd-toothed snakes, the beautiful Ishikawa frogs, habu, crocodile newts. The list goes on, and the list is also on the Naturetrek's webpage, so you can go there and check that out. So about the guides, so I'll just skip on. So I'm, as I said, Richard Pearce, a nature lover since a child, and I'll be basically leading the tour and focusing on the Totori area is kind of my home turf. So I trained. I hope you can still hear me. It says the internet connection's not great. Is everything okay?
Yeah, all good.
Great. Then so I trained as a safari guide and in South Africa, and conducted biodiversity surveys in various countries when I was younger. But I've been based in rural Japan for 15 of the last 17 years. And I've been an adventure, nature, and culture tour leader since 2013. So I kind of have an understanding of all aspects. So I can not just bring the nature side and this Japanese giant salamander expertise. I can introduce, insight to various aspects of Japanese life and Japanese culture as well. And I've been conducting Japanese conservation tours since 2017. It was the first ever Japanese giant salamander conservation eco tour. And it's been pretty successful until obviously a certain illness came along a couple of years ago, but things are looking up again, which is great. And then I established a non-profit organization to help conserve Japanese giant salamanders, and I'll talk about that briefly in a moment. And I'm also a practitioner of Shugendo. So Shugendo is a form of Japanese mountain worship asceticism, where you kind of go through hardships in the mountain to, on hoping to find enlightenment. So that's me pictured on the left, but it means I get to spend a lot of time in nature, pushing my limits, I guess you can say. So I'm just, Dan, do you know, time-wise, how am I doing?
Yeah, yes. If you okay to hurry along
Speed up a little bit,
Richard, that would be marvelous.
Yeah, sure. So it's established a non-profit organization in the Tottori Prefecture, and with giant salamander conservation at its core, especially in terms of building ramps, nest boxes, and doing research. But as part of this, as you can see this picture here, that we also have organic farming projects, forest rewilding, and education programs. And so you can find, if you look up sustainable Dyson on the internet, you can find all this kind of information. But we started a campaign called Save the Japanese Giant Salamander. And we've had a few big successes already, created a private sanctuary, this is outdated, and even put in some handmade ramps with the help of the US Marines based in Japan, which was great. Okay, next up, one of the superstars, and really something special about this tour is that the other guides, the local guides, if you like, are extreme, are famous superstars in the field of herpetology in Japan. So in the Kyoto Lake Biwa area, we'll be joined by Shintaro Seki-san, Mr. Seki, and he runs Conservation Center, Aquatic Life Conservation Center, which we'll visit together. And he's actually published 67 books to date, and I hope to have that page open, but I can't see it now. Here we go. Can you see this still? So this is just some of his books. So you can see frogs, reptiles, amphibians of Japan, all these different books, salamanders. So really you can tell he is the authority and he's the photographer for all these books. So you can learn from him about photography as well as about the animals themselves, which is obviously, he's the man. And then moving on, hopefully. So this is some of his work. So here's a picture of one of his famous Japanese giant salamander photographs. As you can see, very incredible. But if you look him up, you can find his other work as well. And then in Okinawa, we'll be guided by Mark Thorpe, who's had a very interesting life. He was member of the Foreign Legion. Anyway, he was in the Foreign Legion, and then he worked for the National Geographic TV and film. He's an Emmy Award winner for his wildlife videos, and he's won multiple film festivals and has got various accolades. But the best way to show Mark's talent is to show you some of his photographs of the species we will hopefully see. So starting off with, sorry, I think the internet connection's going really slow now, just to throw another spanner in the works. Okay, so coming up, that's quite annoying. Oh, there we go. So this is the beautiful blue morph of the Kajika frog. And there's also the green morph that we all see. And then moving on, this is the Kurawa's ground gecko. And then, so also various species of habu. So habu is the viper found in Okinawa. This is Hime, so the princess. He means princess. I don't know why it's on the page. One of the superstars and most sought after species to see is this one, the Anderson's crocodile newt. Yeah, so we have, if by joining Mark, we have the best possible chance, more than any Japanese professor or researcher. Mark really is the guy, because he spends his life, wandering into the Yambaru jungle looking for these species. And then another one is this one, the Ryoku black-breasted leaf turtle. And I think that our final afternoon we will spend looking for that. Yeah, sorry, there's a bit of a rush through. And a couple other things I wanted to discuss with you is perhaps food. So I'm personally a vegetarian, and Japan is, I know, perhaps somewhat famous for being difficult for vegetarians and vegans. That is true, absolutely. But as me, with me as your guide, I'm able to find something good and tasty to eat at all places. And then safety would be another one to talk about. So, of course, so with Mark, we will be in the company of beauties like this Hime Habu, a highly venomous snake, but everything will be done safely and following Mark's guidance, and we won't be entering the striking distance of any of these species. And as long as we stay safe distance behind Mark, then all should be good. And then Japan, as we talked about, is a very safe country anyway in terms of crime. It pretty much doesn't happen. So it's kind of a tropical paradise without the petty theft, is the best way to, one of the great things to say about Okinawa. Okay, I'm probably way over, and apologies for the kind of bad, sleepy delivery. And yeah, so that's me. I really hope to see you in Japan for the. And apologies for the way this is working as well.
It's all right. Don't worry, Richard.
Dragon.
Don't worry. It's okay. We appreciate you joining us in the middle of the night, early morning. So
Right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So I'm happy to answer any questions you might have when we get to that stage.